Hello, this is Black Country Blokes chewing the fat.
Listen.
I've been hearing a lot lately about men don't talk, but in my experience, men do talk, just people aren't listening. So it's going to be me and a group of blokes discussing our struggles and victories through life. Warning, there may be some bad language, so apologies to all the moms, especially my own. Let's get going.
Listen.
Having, yeah. It's the Black Country Blokes chewing the fat. With me, Kev Dillon, Lee Cadman, and even though Aaron Jew's not on camera, he's with us. So Aaron Jew will be the dove from above. And we're joined today by Dean Clark. Now, Dean Clark has got a condition called bipolar. And that's a word that's thrown around so much in media and everything. But he's had it for a while. So he's going to be coming on and telling us about what it is to have this condition. And it's not an end-of-life condition like all these things are. A condition doesn't define who you are. It's just a part of what you are. So, Dean, thank you ever so much, bro, for coming on.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the invite on the show as well. Looking forward to chatting with you guys and sharing some experiences.
Now, Dean's appeared on Find Your Voice, Aaron's podcast. But me and Dean, complete strangers, I like to get to know our guests before they come on. And we were on the phone just chewing the fat for about an hour the other day, weren't we, bro?
Sorry, mate.
I said we were talking for about an hour the other day on the phone, just getting to know each other.
Yeah, do you know what? I think when you talk about something so passionate about, and also something what you've got a lot of experiences to share, and you want to share with people, relate, the time just disappears. But yeah, it was a good chat. It was a good chat. Took a lot away from it myself. Do you know what I mean? It only takes one phone call, one conversation.
So before we go into everything, could you tell us firstly a bit about bipolar?
Yeah, I mean, bipolar itself comes in a few different forms. It originally used to be called manic depressant. It still has that label. I like to call it a label is because most labels become association to stuff. So when you talk about bipolar, everyone assumes manic depressant, high or low. Although a lot of experiences with bipolar, with people that are diagnosed with bipolar, can be the same, relatable, they're very different. So you can go in waves of emotions where you're low or depressed. Like I've had a couple of really depressed episodes. And then from that sort of place, you can kind of float in the middle. And then you can go manic, hypermanic, like hypermania and psychotic. And I've gone all the way. Very fortunate for myself, I've gone psychotic only once. But it's very hard to control things. So if you're low, you're depressed. Everything around you is like a fog. It's a haze. It's hard to function. It's loss of motivation, a complete numbness of emotions. Like one of the hardest things for me is if I care for somebody as close as they are, girlfriend or partner or friend, like there's nothing for them at that period of time, zero. Like it's just all emotions are cut completely off. And another number of things that happens with that as well. I tend to quit things, stop things. Restart things, and then the other end of the scale is I'll just put up a video actually about it now like the manic and hypermania is it's like you're injected with so much energy plus 100, and it becomes borderline addictive, but it's a bit like a drug that you want but then you want it to stop, and that's how I explain it. Like you want the manics to come because especially when you feel low, it goes so far. Like for me, I'm like massively creative when I'm manic. I'm also I talk far too much. I talk over people. It's my way or the highway. I can become what people would assume be quite rude, very outspoken. I will buy lots of things. I'll become very obsessed with stuff, and that's the way I always explain bipolar with experiences, because unless you've got bipolar, it's still that label of manic depressant, and it's not just high or low. There's waves in between. There's I was just speaking to you before, yesterday I'm a complete different person to what I am now. Sat in someone's arms in tears, with just such an overwhelming feeling of what was going on. Woke up this morning and I'm fine. Well, I feel fine.
But I think that what you said, like when we talk on the phone, when people put labels on it, go, oh, well, he's bipolar because he's really down or he's really happy. No, that's an emotion. We should feel down. We should feel overwhelmed with happiness. But like when you've got OCD, oh, he's got OCD because he's all tied in his bloody house. And you go, no,
Yeah,
the extreme forms of what bipolar is or what OCD is, that's the other scale, isn't it? It's not like I feel down because you cat shit on the carpet, or I'm happy because I've just snogged a girl. You should feel a bit pissed off or a bit happy because of that occasion.
yeah. Yeah, it's multiplied. Like, it's a great way of putting it. Sometimes I don't actually give the description of bipolar that much justice. I don't give it that much substance of what it is, for a number of reasons. Because sometimes experiences are so different. But yeah, you're right. Like, you feel things like very, very differently, very extreme. Like relationships. Like if I was to meet a girlfriend when I was manic, I'd marry her there and then. Like, and that becomes quite hard for that person because I draw them in under, I suppose, false pretenses. Like, they think I'm that way for them, but it could be quite extreme. And then at the other end, I could be like, that's it. I've got no emotions. Don't want to be with you. Don't want to do these things. Like, hard enough for me. But I always call people with bipolar and mental illness, that's what I call the others. So my experience with bipolar is very different to the people that live with someone that has it. And a lot of people don't mention them.
But that must be tough in itself, isn't it? Once again, um, I meet Dean, and Dean's so passionate and so life going, and every day is an adventure. The next day, Dean doesn't want to go off the settee. It must be so hard. And I mean, when you're in a relationship, when you first meet someone, man or woman, whatever you go for, you don't want to show your cards too early because we want to be our best self. When
No.
do you approach that in a relationship?
Again, I think it depends what, like, it's. I mean, I use the words how I see it. Like, when you're manic, and I know this happens for a lot of guys. And the thing is there's not many men that want to talk about bipolar or even know that they've got it. Um, and I believe that a lot more women do. But for me, it's 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 how I first come across. Like, I suppose I can come across as not a predator, but I seek that relationship. So that's the mood I'm in. And then what I do is I'll get loads of dating apps and I'll download all these things. So how I approach it to them is normally when I'm like that, I'm not open about it very much and I don't really approach it. But it works on the opposite side. Like, because of something that happened in my past where it resulted in a suicide attempt. My partner at the time couldn't deal with it and she left me. So it depends what mood I'm in, mate. Like, really, sometimes I can approach it and go, bang, I've got bipolar. I mean, I can't hide it now. It's all over my social media. But yeah, I'm better now. I can use, I'm quite proud of it when I feel good. But no, I am. I'm proud that I can speak about it. So yeah, it depends, mate. And that's a long-winded answer to your question, but whatever mood I'm in will be how I approach it.
Well, I think it's brilliant what you said. Like, you're ashamed of it now. You've plastered it everywhere, and I think this is what we've got to do. Like, I lost my vision at 3, and for years it was a taboo subject. My nearest and dearest knew about it, but other people just thought I hadn't got my contacts in. But I think as soon as you can own your form of disability or mental illness, then you can start to adapt, and you're no longer living in the shadows because you own it.
Yeah, it's like I spoke about like the resilience. Like, I believe you can thrive with your mental illness. Like, life's about development. It's a great way of being open about it and getting people to understand it. But like yourself, like, I mean, you just mentioned things like contact lenses and stuff like that. Like, people won't want to bring that up with you for whatever reason because they feel like they might offend you and stuff like that. But actually, ultimately, by you having that, is you're thriving with the condition or the illness. Like, that's what you're doing. It doesn't mean you're always going to thrive. Like, you'll have bad days, like me. But I just believe now that I don't see a diagnosis as a cure. It's not an answer. It's just another step to understanding yourself. And like I said, I just believe that I'm thriving with my mental illness now. That doesn't mean that it's gone and it's there, but it just means that I have a better way of understanding and dealing with it.
Well, Lee, because Lee's got a severely disabled daughter, and we've said like before, when people just walk past and say, "Don't stay in the wheelchair," because I'd rather them ask the question and say,
Right.
"Look at that little girl having a beautiful wheelchair," than it to be a taboo subject. Isn't that right, Lee?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think the only way you can stop that stigma as well is by talking about it. And I have no problem at all with anyone coming up to us and asking what a condition is and what a life's like. You know, it's no problem at all.
But
I don't know whether that would be different because they're obviously talking to us and not my daughter. She's not able to communicate. So, how do you feel? Are you quite open if someone would come up to you and talk about it if they knew?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's like because the emotions are quite extreme. Like, I mean, if I'm feeling low or something, I'll avoid every conversation possible, even about like everyday life. But yeah, I want people to ask me about it. I'm getting better, but I want people to ask. So I really want people to understand about mental illness and I want to be able to help them understand it. But then I also want them to understand what bipolar is, because as I said at the beginning, I just believe that it's still labelled. Like, I look at it disability as well. Like, a lot of people don't look into the type of disabilities; they just see disability. I talk from experience because my mum has a disability. No one will actually ask what's wrong. So yeah, I will try and draw that person in. I talk about it, and then also I say, look, you know, I'm a man and I'm a guy and I have a mental illness, and that's it. It's it.
but you've also got to read the room, haven't you? If I see you
Yeah.
with your hood up, head down, stalking around, I'm thinking now's not the time to ask him. We've got a bit of common sense with this. Like me, if you see me and I'm having a full blown argument with someone, crying my heart out, now's not the proper time to
No,
address Kev for questions.
no, you're right. But again, I think that's, you know, other people. What I had a conversation with one of my clients literally before this, and it's like people want to ask because we're inquisitive. Like, you can't help but, like, there's a car accident. I mean, like, on the motorway, you cannot help but look and stare at it, and it's within us to be so inquisitive. So I think, like, it is reading it, and that's one of the hardest parts as well, because like a lot of mental illness is hidden, and I perfected the smile for years. I crafted this smile. So on the flip side, you also got to think, well, I've got to look for other signs. um You know, you see those pictures of celebrities, like, this is what depression looks like. It's not what depression looks like, it's what someone with depression could look like. And there's a lot of other signs. And I think if we're educated more in mental illness instead of the typical tick boxes and the cliches of it, I just believe we can look for a little bit more. It's always the same. Like, we want men to talk, right? It's the reason why we're here now, and we want everybody to talk about mental illness. But there's going to be some people that don't want to talk and they can't talk. So how do we bridge that gap, right? So there needs to be a more an education process that offers sustainability. And I'm able to talk, and you guys are able to talk, and people like us need to be shared more. And if we've got a voice, I always say to people, like, you've got mental illness. We've all got mental health. We're all at a risk of mental illness. But if you can't talk about it yet, that's actually fine. Like, understandable. I don't like using the word okay, because okay means satisfactory. Do you know what I mean? Like, but it's chucked around a lot. And I just say, surround yourself with people that can. Like, surround yourself with people that can. It's a lot easier to surround yourself with people that can talk about their mental illness than it is to talk about it yourself.
And if you've got those voices like these podcasts and people, your peers, and they're talking, eventually, I know me now is 37. I can now talk. You've asked me at 27 to come on this. I wasn't ready. But
No.
if there's more people, I've always had a brilliant dad who can just talk about this and be very open. But that gives you the strength when you know there's other people, big, tough, strong men, or the local plumber, or the window cleaner, or the jelly stacker at Woolworths, has also got problems. And I think once you realise that you're not alone with whatever demons you've got, it does make it easier to talk about. So I think that's what holds so many of us back. You don't want to be the first one to say, you know what, Dean, I'm frightened. Or you know what, Lee, I get depressed. Or you know what, Aaron, sometimes I'm too frightened to leave the bloody house.
No, You'd rather like bottle it up. You'd rather go through like it's a lot harder to not talk than it is to talk. But it takes that part where you have to talk, if that makes sense. Like it's draining. And to be fair, not talking nearly cost my life. But it's now easier for me. I find what I'm doing now a lot easier. It's a lot better on my mental health. And I'd love everyone to just use their voice, like 100%. But it's not necessarily the case. And I know we've got to get people to talk about. But one thing I say to everyone is that it's a lot easier when you keep talking, because that right there on the far side is graft draining, and it's just one of the hardest things I've done in my life.
How did you get diagnosed, Dean?
I mean, I was being ex-army. I went in and out of depression. I was always labelled with PTSD. I keep saying labelled, but I was diagnosed with PTSD. It's always a quick thing. Ex-army, struggling with depression, you got PTSD. They won't really look into it much deeper, unfortunately. And then 2017, I took an attempt on taking my life for the first time. There's been other times where I've contemplated it, which quite a lot of people do, by the way. And yeah, it was when I come out of hospital, I was sectioned twice. I attempted to take my life again. And then it was within a couple of months of that, like everyone thought I had depression, and I didn't really know what depression was. And then one day in February, coming into March, I literally woke up, got dressed, got showered, had a shave, and was like, yeah, let's go back to work straight, pretty much that quickly. And everybody was like, whoa. So yeah, the doctors had seen it, and I was still in the crisis team, and they were like, hang on a second, like what's going on here? And then we started looking back at my records and being like, there's a pattern here. And it's kind of like, why didn't you see that before, for whatever reason? And that was the diagnosis of bipolar. How I was diagnosed was a bit shocking from the doctor, and someone else probably have it. I was given a leaflet, said I had bipolar, and given some forms about medications, and that was it.
Isn't it mad when you've had a bombshell like that? You'd think
Yeah.
you'd have someone holding your hand at that stage saying, look, it's not what you're seeing on the TV. It is manageable. We can get through it with the right help. But just to have a leaflet like you bloody, I don't know, a newspaper's coming through your door.
Yeah, that's, you know what, that was like, I laugh at it now. Like, there's a lot about my bipolar I laugh, a lot about my life I laugh, and even the lows have got to laugh. But that's probably one of the funniest things that's happened. Like when I look back at it, because it's kind of like, wow, like I had no idea what bipolar was. Like it's a life-changing illness, but you can live with it. Everyone's different, but yeah, just. Yeah, Mr. Clark. In fact, it was his words first. He was like, right, Dean, we'll sit you down. And I was kind of like, yes, I'm going to get an answer. Like, I'm finally going to get like the actual, I don't know, full diagnosis of PTSD. Had no idea. And all of a sudden it was like, you got bipolar, Mr. Clark. And I was like, right, okay. And then spoke for a couple of minutes, gave me 3 forms on 3 different medications. He didn't even have the form printed off with the bipolar on it. He actually went down to the reception. I waited outside, called back in, given it, and then I was booked my next appointment. All right. I walked out the door. I remember phoning someone going, they're like, how'd it go? I was like, I've just been diagnosed with bipolar. Like, that's how it happened. That's how it happened. There wasn't nothing else. Can they do something more? I don't know, but that's how it happened.
Dean, do you think that's just because they don't really know about it themselves? Because something similar happened with my daughter when she got her diagnosis. It's a really rare form of epilepsy, and in truth, the doctor had never heard of it. So, what at that point, what advice, all but this medication may work, could they give you? You know, if you're not clued up on it, where do they go?
Do you know what? You're right. I think that's actually probably one of the big reasons. Like, I mean, I've done quite a lot of research into mental health, and actually mental health has only really come to treatment for mental health. I mean, it's come back to like 1800s where, there was processes happening, but really only really come to light actually relatively quite soon. So I think that is actually one of the reasons. I also believe that it's kind of like it's a resources thing. Like the amount of the budget that gets given to the NHS every year that goes to mental health is pretty shocking. And I know it's got to go somewhere. And I know we get free health service and stuff, but I mean, come on. So yeah, I think you're right. I do. It's something I definitely looked at. But why don't they know enough about it? That's my question. Like,
But I was
why?
saying, me and my brother were talking the other day, and you go to your GP, it's a general practitioner. So they know a little bit about most stuff. And you're lucky if you bump into that GP who specialised in mental health or specialised in epilepsy. But a lot of time, they're a guy who knows somebody.
Yeah, yeah. And it's I look at doctors, right, like teachers. Like it's like the teacher that the pupils that excel in that class tends to be the teacher that's really passionate about what they're teaching. So if you've got a doctor that's having a hard time working long hours trying to keep to his schedule, not really passionate about his or her job anymore, how are they really going to be passionate about finding out a little bit about more than you and helping you as well? And that's what I believe, because I've met, like, I've got some bad injuries through all sorts of things. Fighting was one of them when I detached my bicep, and the doctor he actually done MMA and BJJ and stuff like that. And he was like, right, he says, I shouldn't say this, but you're going to need to start loading your bicep a bit sooner than what the NHS says. And he was like, my advice to you is go and see a good osteopath or a good physio that will deals with sports injuries like that. And that's exactly what I did. I could have got someone that wasn't passionate about that or wasn't passionate about being there and gone, follow the physio 6-week protocol, take your little handouts, go home, practice them, and you might not recover properly.
And a lot of them will say, oh, you're into boxing, oh, you're into mixed. And I'll go, you've got to pack that in. And what you want to say is, that's the only thing that's keeping me alive is that sport. Yeah, I'm getting hit in the face, but it is keeping me alive.
Oh yeah, being punched. No one likes being punched in the face, right? But being punched in the face was keeping me alive. It's very like, you know, some people think you're a bit like, I just got out of a sparring session. I was like, oh, that feels so good. Like that feels so good.
Preaching to
Well,
the choir there.
It's
Yeah, I mean,
the only game in the world where you walk up to someone 20 years later and goes, do you remember when you broke my nose? It was a great night, that was.
yeah. Like I used to get that with rugby and stuff like that. And yeah, I went sparring with one of the pros once. I couldn't be any more out of my depth, but yeah, I mean, like I got battered. Not like I didn't get taught lessons and stuff like that. I learned a lot, but yeah, I got busted. I got busted up hard. And yeah, you kind of after you're like, oh yeah, thanks for that, mate. I learned so much from being punched in the face. Got some right life skills there. Cheers.
But people forget how much the gyms, be it whatever gym, gives back to the people who are in it, aren't they? Because a lot of time your coach is a father figure, a big brother, but he's also a counsellor. It's someone you can go to when you're in your darkest day and go, Kev, can I have a quick word outside?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we could tie that in with the subject of what's going on now with the gyms. But do you know what? It's the biggest part of my life, training. I've been lucky to train so many people, been a part of so many people. Training's been my way of going to thing in terms of when I'm struggling, and I also train people, like, as well as doing things like public talking. And I'm not a motivational speaker by any means, because I don't agree with motivational speaking. I'll inspire people, but yeah, I won't motivate people. But yeah, like I've been training people for a long time, and I watch people change through things like training, like gym, like you said, and also there's guys in your gym that trust you, right? And sport and training built trust. So how much of a good transferable skill is that? A young boy or young girl, right? I believe that they have more chance of opening up to you guys with their mental health than they would to any other people, maybe even their family, right? So it blows my mind. It blows my mind how we're not being able to use it right now, but also it kind of gets pushed to the side. Like, you look at Olympics, like some of those athletes pay for themselves, right? What? Like, do people not see how transferable the skills are? Everybody has the right to exercise, and you don't have to go to a gym to exercise. Like, there's something for you that you will enjoy. The reason being is because your body says that. Like, you can't help but not let endorphins take over your body. So there is something for you. So yeah, like, it's not looked after enough. Like, the gyms, even without COVID, like your boxing gyms, you have to like fund yourselves. Like, gyms and organizations like chain gyms, I'm not interested in chain gyms. I don't care about your anytime fitness. Like, they were built to produce an income. They don't care about people. The trainers in there may well do, and I'm not slating brands and stuff like that, but I mean, come on, when you make a platform that you want to fill with trainers and people that don't go to the gym, and you're not actually finding out why, like, they're making money and getting money, and then you've got your guys, like your boxing gyms and the gym that I was helping build down the road, and they get nothing. Like, they get absolutely nothing. And why is that? Like, we have to go and raise our own money to support our gym, and the little type of funding you got to do to get it is so long and extensive that, you know, you don't actually run through with it. And they're helping people. That's one way of helping mental health, right? It's two: mental health, physical health. We're one. We're not separate. Like, let's stop treating it separately in a lot of areas.
And that's why, like we were saying off camera, like big, strong bloke like you are, and all of us have been involved in boxing, and saying we're still human beings. If you cut us, we've still got skin, blood, and bone.
Yeah.
Whether you're 6'4" like you, that's how tall you are. I mean,
Yeah.
big bloke, handy, or whether you're as small as my little Jasmine, we're built of the same stuff. So, as big or as small as you are, we all struggle with the same demons, and that's why
Yeah.
it's great getting us together and saying we are the same. We are people, so let's help each other get through it.
No, 100%. It's I think a lot of our issues as well is conformity. I think it's really messed up at the minute, however long it's taken. But what I mean by that is, I think we're so influenced by the wrong influences, and that then comes into conformity. Right? There's a number of different types of conformity, but I mean, Instagram is a prime example, like, of things like conformity. Like, it only takes one thing to go off and happen, and there's a large group of people following it. And like I said, it comes down to, like, you know, where those influences are coming from, and stuff like that. And there's a few, slightly off subject, but there's quite a few influences for mental health, but I don't think you see enough of it.
Or it's the wrong kind of. It's just a quick slogan, and you're thinking, what I'm going through can't be dealt in a two-line sentence.
No. I done actually. I was a guest on a podcast the other day, and I'm all about changing the way we look at mental health, right? Because I believe the way we're going to change the way we look at mental health is by changing the way we look at it, and actually giving ways of doing that, instead of click, share, tag, hashtag, and share things. Like, yeah, they're doing a job, right? But something's still not working. And are we actually getting to the root of why it's not working, or are we trying to make it work without getting to that point? And one of the things that I spoke about is I don't like some of the phrases, because I have the right to talk from experience. So Mental Health Week was all about being kind to yourself, and there's loads of different ways to be kind to yourself. I get that, but I'm talking from men's mental health. If someone told me to be kind to myself, first of all, I'd be like, fuck off. Second of all, how do I be kind to myself? I'm a man, and this isn't to separate genders at all, but my perception of being kind to myself, especially then, not what I know now, would be going out and treating myself and pampering myself, and I'm not separating genders. This is what I would believe. I have every right to say this, obviously. But then we spoke about earlier, like, okay, so it's okay to not be okay. I get that, and it served its place. But when people can't actually explain what okay means, and they're happy to share it, something's going wrong. Like, I googled the for somebody the other day, like the actual what it actually stands for and meant in the Oxford Dictionary and the Cambridge, and it basically means there's a number of things. It means satisfactory in a lot of cases. So and I know it's other. Well, it means some other things, but shouldn't we be asking more than that? Like, shouldn't we be sharing more than that? Like, are you satisfactory? And I know there'll be people out there that will say, well, actually, it means this and this, but within that area and within that meaning, it says satisfactory. So I walk into your gym, and let's just change the word for what it could or what it actually means is go, are you satisfactory today? How do you answer that? What is satisfactory in mental health? Like, what is actually okay? Really? What's okay?
What's okay to one person is completely different to another. And I think with the social medias is I'm all right, but I'm not as good as maybe you are. I'm not as good as how maybe I should be. Instead of thinking, you know what, I feel good, or I feel sad,
Yeah.
or I feel shit, or I feel fabulous.
Yeah. And I mean, it's like, it's a lot harder for a guy to say those things. But I mean, I think one of our issues is that we don't actually understand emotions as guys. That's probably one of the issues. Like, I'll be like, whoa, what's this emotion here? And then obviously we look at a lot of emotions negatively, and a lot of negative emotions can have positive outcomes, like jealousy, right? Everyone sees it as a bad thing. It does, like anything, bit of like a yin and yang kind of thing. But jealousy can also make you up your game in a positive way. Now, if we're always looking at stuff again with association, we're not going to learn then as well. And like, is there much education going on about emotions? Like, is it being taught in schools about emotions? Really? Like, it wasn't when I was there. And why is that happening? Or maybe we don't want to play. Sorry.
I think we said this the other day, Dean, saying I believe teaching like my Jasmine's in year one, and I get her to draw faces on the board, and I say, like, what is this? It's a happy face, a sad face, an angry face. Teach them empathy, and that's easier to teach someone at primary school level. Why are you feeling sad? Because the emotions are raw to them, and explain empathy and explain how to read. Because teaching a first year real old bloke, I've survived all this time without it, and now I'm too broken to fix, or that's how you feel. But if we
Yeah.
get them at primary school level saying, Kevin, why are you so angry? Dean, why are you pulling that girl's hair? Lee, why are you hiding in the cupboard? And get to know why they're feeling it. I think that is the key to beating it, dealing and getting the the higher ground on mental health.
Yeah. No, 100%. And do you know what? That kind it's a really good way of looking at it, actually. It's something that I'll probably take and pass on. I think that's everything how we learn. We're storytellers. But if we go back to conformity happens really at its earliest stages in school, to a degree. Like, the only type of conformity we have is within our family. So what happens inside there is all you kind of know. So when it comes out to there, it's kind of, well, actually, can we teach really early on and actually make a really positive impact to people's mental health even earlier on? Like, the school's curriculum is so intense and so tense. Teachers are at a higher risk of mental illness, right? What's being done about that? What, they'll have a mental health awareness day, and or they might have an hour of it within their ridiculously strict time limits that they've got on their training days and the curriculums and stuff. So it's kind of like, is this where we change the way? Like what you've said there, like, what you walk out of a toilet, right, and you can press the standard of that toilet, yeah, and they'll take stats from it, right? Or you'll go and I've done a corporate event once, a corporate talk, and on the way out, it's like, how did that talk go? And this is conformity, right? You have a better chance of being more open if you are, what's the word? If you are in not a secret environment. If you don't think people know what you're doing, someone's gonna have to change what I'm trying to say here. But
Safe environment.
yeah, safe environment, but it's disclosed, private, anonymous.
Yeah, confidential.
Wow. Confidential. There we go. I've got 2 words. But why can't these things start being adapted in the schools and stuff like that? Like, I mean, it might be happening in some places, it might be test and trial, but I'm putting together a thing for next year that I'm taking to businesses, and fingers crossed I can get into schools. And my whole goal is to offer people sustainability. I feel like you go and talk about mental health and then you leave and there's no process after. Like, kind of like an exposed wire. You sit there and go, well, actually, how do I keep practicing this? And one of the things is getting everybody to draw on a card, like make it a ballot box, right? And it will work. I've done some stereotyping things. It's like, right, first thing you do, you come in here, like just go and put what you want down there. And it's got to be honesty. And I know this will work. And then nobody knows what everyone's put, right? But you hold these up. And I know some people will be honest and some people won't, but I've done this through a trial period. And it actually made me feel a little bit uneasy in terms of nobody in that room knew what was going on. And there was a couple of faces in there that said like unhappy. So not angry, unhappy. And it's kind of like, well, something so simple and something so effective, right? Well, why can't these things be incorporated? Why can't a business have an app? I know there's some places that have got an app now where they can put themselves how they're feeling and things like that. But why can't a business or corporate environment or a school have something so simple that could be effective? Could be. It might not be the answer, but you know, kids, you've with your little one, you've hit nail on the head. You're starting to teach your little one about if you're feeling this, drawing faces and stuff like that, right? That's the first stages of a child understanding emotions. So if you can get them to understand it, how do you know if something's being taught? Confirmation, right? You teach something and someone in boxing, and then you'll pretty much get them to do it back, right? If you don't, 9 times out of 10, you get a whack or something. But it's obviously not what we're going to do. But it's a teaching process.
Aaron, have you got it? Sorry, Dean. Aaron, have you got anything to chime in with?
Yeah, I was just, all of it's been quite interesting. Obviously, myself and Dean, we've had a conversation and I'm an avid follower. So I definitely recommend anyone listening now to follow Dean on his Instagram, because I think the best thing that you said today, well, one of the best things was we're in a society now, we're influenced by the wrong influence. Like, that just resonated with me. And I think what we're trying to do, at least on the Black Country Blokes, and, you know, Dean, what you're doing through your transparency and your social media is talk about the stuff that's important, trying to encourage people to talk. But I think we all have to accept as well that it's a process, and it's all right for us for sitting here now and for anyone listening saying, guys, we need to talk, we think we've got the answers, or if you're stressed, have a conversation. But for some people, that's always not the case. And I suppose the only thing I really wanted to say, myself, I'm happy to talk. Like, 4 of us having a conversation, myself and Dean have had a conversation, but it's one of those things, it's not an everyday thing as well, even for us. I'm sure you guys would agree. Like, some days I want to talk and some days I don't want to see any of you guys at all. And I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's a condition, if it needs a label or anything. And it's quite scary for me, because that's something that's only really happened in the last few years. But I think if we can just at least understand that and openly express that, so that when we are influencing people, if they're going through the same things, they then recognize that, well, actually, I'm not an anomaly here. I'm not a problem here or something. I suppose it's a bit like a gym analogy. You know, sometimes I don't want to go to the gym, but I know by going to the gym, I'm going to feel so much better. And it's a bit like talking. This is why I keep preaching about talking. I know those days I don't feel like talking, but if you just have a rattle for like 5-10 minutes, you instantly feel a little bit better. You feel uplifted. So that was all I really wanted to touch on, really. But it's just, yeah, it's been a great conversation.
Lee, anything you want to bring in?
No, I think I'd just like to go back to the school a bit. And I think a lot of it's down to as well that it's a really hard thing to teach, isn't it? Mental health and how to. It's not a textbook English lesson. You know, it's something that that's quite hard to teach. And I think if you're going to bring it into schools, you also need to bring in the right people to teach it.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think with a lot of people that I spoke to as well, is it's actually like do we need to teach mental health, or do we need to teach how to look after it? And actually, I believe that, you know, that actually a lot of people can teach that, like, or having it some way in a school where it's incorporated. But now you've made like a huge, you know, it's a really good point. And the only reason why something changes is because like different opinions and different views. And I think you're right that it is a very difficult thing to teach. And I've heard it from a lot of people, and then all of a sudden I kind of think it's like, are we setting ourselves the wrong type of boundaries? I think, I mean, I use schools as an example. It's across the board, really. And like Aaron said, he's kind of like, well, it's easy for us to talk. Do you know what? Actually, it's not easy for us to talk. It's easier. It's not. No, do you know what? It's not easy for us to talk. It's easier. And I mean, Aaron's he's hit the nail on the head. It's like sometimes you don't want to. And what he did say as well is it's like influencing. Right, social media is great, but the problem is whoever's giving out the content and whoever's receiving it, because that's the only thing on Instagram, and other things, not just Slate Instagram. And yeah, I think you're really right there.
But I think if we had like, because every gym, every school has now got a first aider. It's quite obvious if I cut my hand and I'm dripping of blood, it's quite obvious my hand's bleeding. But I think we should have every teacher, every coach, and I want to really push this through after all these lockdowns come through, having every boxing coach having a mental health first aid. Because my job as a first aider isn't to sew your head back on. I've got to keep you alive until the ambulance gets there, or I can do my best to keep you safe. I haven't got to be the one that talks you off the bridge. I haven't got to be the one who gets you the medication. But I think if people could be more aware of it, going, something ain't right.
Yeah.
Maybe I should go and talk to him. And I'm saying at primary school level, we're not going into bipolar and suicide. Just getting to know yourselves and getting to know those emotions, why we're feeling that way. And obviously at primary school, especially at my Jasmine's age, it's little by little by little. And then as they get older, they're going, sir, can I talk to you about something? Or miss, can I have a word?
Yeah. No, I agree, and I think as well, it's like when these conversations happen. Like I've been really lucky to be invited onto some remarkable platforms like yourself. It always sounds like it's easier said than done, and there's obviously a lot that goes behind all that. But I just feel like what you've said there, it's kind of like you said about like there's a process, right? If you break your arm, you go through a process, you go through pain, you get triaged and so on. And yes, schools have to have a first aid area, mandatory first aid area. It's part of the school, but there isn't anything for mental health. Like it doesn't mean that kids have to go there and talk, because obviously it's going to look quite obvious, and they might not go because they're scared, but people are like, I've been lucky to work alongside a guy that's, you know, they're doing incredible things and they're building up courses where they can mind at work, where they can go and train people, but there isn't enough in the schools. Like it's, you know, they're having to go off their back to go and do these things, and charitable organisations, and like I said, it's really easy for us to stand there, sit here and go, yeah, they need to put money here, we need to put money there, but I think some of the answers are right in front of us.
What we're saying is how awkward and difficult it is. Imagine being the first ever person went in and taught sex education. and that's the most natural thing in the world. And then people going, but you can't teach them where the bits go, because imagine how hard that was. Can't be no more difficult than what we're doing, teaching kids to do mental push-ups. So if you are in hard times, no good me turn into a bloke who's 30 stone going, you want to get fit, go for a 10-mile run. Going, I'll die. So let's get kids used to having mental fitness.
Yeah, that's it. It's kind of like I always speak to people, and they're kind of like I said, I'm all about changing the way. It's my strapline, and that's across the board. And I do believe that we're looking at things in the wrong way. But like, if we look at what helps mental health, like I said, we've all got mental health, and we're all at a risk of mental illness. We're all sat here now, but you hit the nail on the head, like about having kind of the gym and the training and so on. But there's a lot of other things that you can do to look after your health. And again, I know it's coming back to the thing. It's like, feed the kids better food. That's going to help mental health.
Yep.
Jesus, like, you want to reduce the numbers of things like suicide rates and the mental illness and the strain on the NHS. Like, it's a little bit, how, the obesity that's going on across the world. It's like, it's dealt really wrong. Like, those men and women are going through a hard enough time as it is, right? Without being educated, the absolute wrong stuff, and so on. But again, I think it comes back to kind of that mental health, like marginal gains, right? You're not gonna completely stop suicide rates, but no, there is actually some areas that you can really work on. Like I said, food, PE. My daughter gets ridiculous, like not even an hour a week. The level of stress that kids have to go through exams, like, you want to, I know I'm trying to change the world here, but I mean, you want to reduce these numbers and help people. Stop pushing these kids to the extreme, right? I don't need to be a politician, or I don't need to be any big influencer, motivational speaker to talk about the obvious. Like, I know kids, I was working with a charity, and grit, resilience, self-harm in teenagers, local resilience, blew me away, right? And out of the 3 kids I got to closely mentor, every single one of them said that they cannot deal with the amount of work they got to do to pass their GCSEs, right? Then they got emails, then they get WhatsApp, then they got Instagram, they got all these things, right? Now, some of them, we're trying to control them and we can't, right? People are working against social media. Start working with it, all right? Because it's here for the rest of our life. Yeah, we don't need far right. We don't need far left. We don't need, it's great to have Netflix programs like Social Dilemma coming out and giving us awareness, but we've got to work with it, and that's their way. So how can we, sort of look at it in terms of other places? Like, these kids, it happens at an early age. You go to a psychiatrist, and the first thing they do go, what happened as a child? Like, let alone the pandemic outcome, right? In 2 to 3 years' time, with the paramedics and the doctors that are going to be going through, the suicide rates are going to rocket through the roof. And the next generation is going to rocket through the roof, right? There is an element that can be controlled there. Like, you guys, when I grew up, I had one of those phones that you could throw. It wouldn't smash. It was most indestructible, like Nokia 3310, all of these things, and we had no access. Oh, it's a shame Nokia went bust, but they were so naive. Apple wiped them out. But yeah, it's kind of like, I don't know, the Simon Sinek, Fight Night, Infinite Game, right? We're thinking Fight Night all the time, and in the most, I'm not being pessimistic or negative, but you think that people think that we've got a mental health crisis on our hands now? Oh, we've got a bigger one to come.
And I think,
I think you're right there, Dean. Sorry, Kev. I think you're right there. I mean, I have my daughter's 11 in secondary school, and she's not the type of person who she's going to stress about exams that much that potentially she won't do as well as she should do. And I'll keep telling her it's not the end of the world if those exam results don't come in and they're not what you think. It's not the end of the world. Don't rely fully on those. And it's probably, it's not. I'm sitting here now. I did terrible, but I'm still sitting here now. It's not going to change your life. It's a very small portion of it. So do your best and try your best. But you've got to try and it's easy for me to say. Don't let it stress
right.
you out to that point.
It's like, do you know what? What entrepreneurs, right, are flying through, right? There is some crazy stuff going on. You don't really need, and I'm not saying like you do. Don't really need GCSEs to become that way. And actually, entrepreneurs are being failed at school at the minute because they're having to learn a lot of stuff like that. That's not to say that people are that way successful because they haven't studied. Of course they have, but yeah, you're 100% right. Like I was working through my GCSEs.
You're same here. I was never going to be someone who was good at sitting down doing GCSEs, but I've always put 100% into work, and that's how I've got on in life. But it's school teaches you a certain way. You wouldn't judge an elephant for its ability to climb a tree, would you? And I think sometimes
I like that.
with school does that, doesn't it? It puts everyone in that one bracket and goes climb that tree. Not everyone's going to be able to climb the tree.
Schools are the first form where we're taught how to conform. Instead of having individual thought and being, all right, then I'm a fidget, all right, then maybe you're a dancer, maybe you're a footballer. And me and you said, Dean, I'm amazed. I haven't been to school in over 20 years, and I'm amazed we're still teaching. I write on the board and you copy me. You've got seers, hearers, and doers. And instead of just being thick, all right, and clever, maybe I'm clever in a different way. If you teach me to pick up 3 footballs, I'll learn how to do maths. If you teach me how to listen to lyrics, but we're teaching the same thing. The definition of madness is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results.
Yeah, no, you're right. And again, I think it's another. And I know there's a lot of like schools. I mean, if you look over in America, like they can't go and do certain football scholarships unless their exams are right. I just think their whole process is taught differently. But on the flip side, they recognise, right, that those people, men and women, are athletes. They're going to become athletes, and anyone that trains is actually an athlete. But that's going to be their line of work. So they actually invest the time a little bit more into them. You get a child that's remarkable at football. The only person really out of a very few is the only person that will pick that up will be a scout, right? If they even come into school, it'll be left for the Sunday club or the Saturday afternoon club or whatever it is. And actually, it's kind of, you see that kid dribbling a ball. I've worked in school. You see that kid dribbling the ball and kick-ups and hitting that ball in the top right-hand net, right? And it just gets seen by. Like, that, like you said and we've said, like, I was never going to get GCSEs. That's not to say that kid's not going to get GCSEs, but there's a part of him that's being forgotten about and not nurtured. And again, I know the theme tonight's been kind of like what we can change on the larger scale, but is it really? Like, is it really that big or that hard or difficult or much of a challenge to change those small things? I don't believe it is.
Instead of trying to change everything, let's make these little steps, and then everything else will fall into place.
And that right there is looking after your mental health, and that right there is looking after mental illness if you have it. Marginal gains.
Well, Dean, unless there's anything else anyone would like to say, so it's been wonderful talking. I have a feeling we could talk all night, so I'd love you to come back on at a different date.
No, I appreciate it.
Has anyone got anything to say to Dean or advertise our Thursday club?
No, I'm good, Dean. I'll just thank you for coming on. It's been a great conversation. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Aaron's dropped off, mate.
All right. So on Thursday, from now on, from last Thursday onwards, we're going to be going live, just me and the 3 other blokes, and we're going to call it our Thirst for a Thoughtful Thursday, just where we all get together, a bit more light-hearted, talking about life and everything. If anyone's got any suggestions they'd like us to talk about, please send them in. What we're thinking this Thursday, we're going to call it Laughing at Life's Bloopers. Because back in the day, for those who remember not having a phone or a camera phone at least, that was some of the best laughs I ever had in the pub. So there was no one filming it, so I was never going to get ridiculed, because by the following weekend it was forgotten about. And I think we've lost that now because we take ourselves so bloody seriously. Like, a photo is better than a video. So video, you see how it actually happened. Photo, you fill in the gaps. And you go, oh, do you remember when we did it? He said, oh, and even better than a photo is an urban legend of a great Friday night. So please tune in Thursday at 7:30. So Dean, have you got any quotes or sayings that's helped you get through life?
Yeah. I got told it when it's not your fault. I used to blame myself for mental illness. I used to think it was me. And it's not. It's not your fault. Like, it's as simple as that. I got asked, that's it. It's not your fault. I have to tell it to myself now, all the time. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. Right. As simple as that for me.
Well, thank you once again, bro, for coming on.
Oh, thanks for your time.
Guys, until we see each other next time, take care of yourselves and each other. Ta-ra a bit.
Listen.
And that's a wrap for another show. But if there are any comments or messages that you would like us to read out for our next podcast, please be in touch. There are also lots of different organisations at the bottom of this page, and hopefully they can help you or someone you care about. Please share this to spread the word. Until we talk next time, ta-ra a bit.
Listen.